Welcome to the Knicks Film School Postgame Show presented by BetUS TV. DJ Zullo here. After the Knicks get a win, 122-103 over the Washington Wizards in a game that saw March Madness sort of infiltrate Madison Square Garden a bit in the second half. That was a wild one, and not really sure about 10 minutes ago where I was going to go with this. Now the Knicks didn't make it a relatively comfortable win, all things considered, once they brought back the starting unit and once they sort of got their bearings after the Wizards outscored them at a point in the second half, 42-17, cut a lead that was 30 plus points down to 4 at one point. Marcus Smart hitting shots, one-legged Dirk fadeaways, pull-up threes from the top of the key. Wild stuff. He leaves the game. The Wizards young players re-enter the game, and it was pretty much downhill from there for the Wizards. But a game that saw the Knicks get a win and maybe threw some water on the flames that had been building over the past couple of weeks, especially over the last two games. Now, when you play the Wizards and you have a huge lead and you take your foot off the gas a little bit in the second half, you allow them to get back into the game, that's not going to put the flames out. Like, there's still embers brewing underneath. And the question from this game is how much what happened tonight can carry over into the Dallas game, into the Clippers game, to see if there's anything sustainable out of this effort. And to be frank, in terms of how Karl-Anthony Towns performed, you would expect him to dominate the matchup against Alex Sarr, a guy who's 205 pounds, overmatched physically, skill-wise, basketball awareness-wise. Like, he just wasn't a matchup for Karl Towns, who drove through him time and time again. Towns would have had a 35, 40-point night if his three was going down. And then OG Anunoby, Mikal Bridges performed admirably in their minutes. I thought Anunoby was great, especially in transition, and Bridges had a barrage in the first half, scoring, I believe, 20 or 25 points in the first half, and really sort of helped being the catalyst to build the Knicks lead up to where they had it in the first half. But you would expect those players to perform that way against that group that the Washington Wizards were playing, a team that is bereft of talent, and the talent they do have is not nearly ready to compete at an NBA level. They have some prospects on that team that have upside, but they are 19, 20, 21 years old and just not ready to play. So you would expect the Knicks starters to go out and dominate. And for the most part, they did, other than some moments in the second half that got a little dicey. Now, I want to start here in terms of like focusing on the specific players and, talk about the point guards, because since Jalen Brunson went out, it's been Deuce McBride taking the mantle and sometimes performing at a level that was commensurate with what you would want from a starting NBA point guard: the defense, the shooting, some improved playmaking. But really, there's a ceiling with Deuce McBride in terms of creating an advantage, some of the shot making aspects that you need from a lead guard in the modern NBA. So I thought Cameron Payne, to start with him, came out tonight and really set the tone with his pace, with his shooting, with his shot making. I thought the Knicks in general did a great job, and it was a concerted effort for them to push the pace, get up and down, get into transition. And that was borne out in some of the three-point attempts. They shot a ton of threes in the first half when they were moving and rolling. And I thought Cameron Payne was a huge catalyst for that. Set the tone. And it was nice for him, a guy that hasn't been shooting well for a good stretch here, about 10-game stretch of shooting 33% from three, under 50% in terms of the true shooting. So he has been struggling for a while here. And I know the final numbers don't look great. He struggled a bit in the second half, but I thought he really set the tone. And, we did get some pretty positive news, it would seem, regarding Jalen Brunson. He's out of the walking boot. He seems like it's moving in a really positive, pretty efficient direction in terms of his recovery. So maybe he is back sooner than later. But they're going to need some point guard play that is going to allow them to generate some offense. And I thought Cameron Payne from the start of this game provided that. And it's important for him because, like it or not, and we can get into the other point guard that had a pretty important night, but the easy money right now is that Cameron Payne is going to get playoff minutes, and he's going to get minutes that maybe the fan base doesn't think he deserves or should get at this point, but I think he's going to get those minutes. At least standing here right now, I think Cameron Payne is going to get playoff minutes. So they need him to provide some offense off the bench, the shot making, the 3-point shooting. Like, those things are critical for a team that doesn't have a lot going in terms of bench scoring. So for Payne to come out, be the energy, be the driving force of the pace that I thought was so critical tonight, I thought was really important. And then the other guy, the other point guard that came in the second quarter and sort of did all the things that he was billed to be able to do. Tyler Kolek entered the game and continued and took the baton from Cameron Payne, continued to push the pace. But what separates him from Cameron Payne is, and I tweeted this earlier, Cameron Payne, for all his shot making, like, that's what he wants to do. Like, he will hunt shots. Tyler Kolek hunts shooters. And you saw him have a clear intention to get Mikal Bridges open threes, cross-court passes, transition passes, like getting him involved, getting him shots, knowing that Bridges had it going. And it's not just the mere act of being aware of the pass, but to be able to pinpoint those passes in a way that is comfortable for the shooter is critical. And I think this is going to be a thing of his that we're going to look at as a Tyler Kolek skill, where guys just shoot better when he's passing the ball from him. And, some of those passes were not elite, where you're getting an advantage and you're getting into the paint and you're driving and kicking, or you're making like insane hook cross court passes out of a pick and roll. Like, these weren't the flashiest or most difficult passes in the world, but he was seeking out shooters and he was hitting them in a way that was comfortable and easy for them to get into their shooting motion. I don't think that should go unnoticed. And there was the one play where Hart gets a rebound, and typically the Knicks point guard, whether it's Brunson or Payne, will sort of jog back, knowing that Hart, once he rebounds, is going to usually be the force of the transition offense and grab and go. But Kolek, who had seen Bridges make a couple of shots in a row, immediately sprinted out towards half court to get an opening for Hart to pass him the ball. Now the transition, the fast break has started. Kolek catches it, finds Bridges with a clean bounce pass into the right corner. Bridges makes the shot. That play developed and happened because Kolek had the awareness to go and get the ball and then make the pass to the guy that was feeling it, on fire, and had it going. So those are the passes. Those are the things that could separate Kolek from your typical point guard that maybe won't have the on-ball scoring ability to lean on. Like, Kolek, for him to thrive in the NBA, is going to have to be a dynamite passer. And we don't know yet if he has the ability to really put pressure on a defense with the ball in his hands. That, to me, is still an open question. And we saw in the second half him get into the paint and struggle a bit. He did have one finish against AJ Johnson, where he sort of opened up like he was going to get the DHO from Cat and then just turn the corner with his right hand, finish with his left. That was a fantastic finish over a couple of Wizards. But there was also another play where he got into the paint, didn't really have anywhere to go, turned it over. So there's still something that we need to be skeptical about regarding Kolek with the ball in his hands. Like, what is required in terms of like ball screening and actions for him to really bend a defense? Now, he can do it in transition. And I thought that's why in the first half he was so dynamic, is because that game was really up and down. The Knicks were, as I mentioned, Cameron Payne set the tone. The Knicks were really getting the ball moving up and down the courts, probably as fast and as demonstrative as any point in the season. And Kolek, that's where he is going to thrive in his early years in the NBA, until he starts to develop some of the really high level ball handling aspects to get into the paint. But right now he is going to be a fantastic playmaker in transition. And that's, I thought, what really led to the 7 assists in the first half. So he was impressive. He was good enough to where I think it is warranted just to want to see more of him. And I think the coach should play him more. We may look at this, if you want to call it a competition, although I don't really think it's a true competition between Payne and Kolek in terms of the backup point guard position right now, because I do think it's Cameron Payne's until further notice. But while Cameron Payne, again, played well tonight, Kolek played well enough to where I would like to see some more minutes from him. And we don't know how long Deuce is going to be out. I don't know if they're calling it a strained groin or a contusion, because he did take a knee to the groin in the Hornets game. But if it's a strain, then this could be a multiple game absence where Kolek is going to play. And we'll really get a pretty good sample size regarding who should be the backup point guard when Jalen Brunson comes back. And that's an important part of this team right now. It's something that has been, I thought, it was a positive for most of the season, because Payne was shooting so well from three and providing a ton of energy and pace to the second unit. But because his shooting has degraded in a significant way, he has not performed like a quality backup point guard for a significant period right now. So let's see maybe if we could create a true competition between these two. And I know it's an uphill battle for Kolek for reasons that I don't know, regarding his actual skill level. I don't know if he has enough to perform against really good defenses in the NBA and get to where he needs to get to and make those passes. Like, do it against the Wizards is one thing, but do it against a high quality defensive team is quite another. And his performance and his skill and his talent within that confines of a half court offense, I'm skeptical. I am. And with that said, I still think he has shown enough to where if we can get a sample here of 5 or 6 games of these two players sharing the point guard duties, maybe Kolek can sort of take it from Payne. And I think he would have to take it from him because, as I said, it's Payne's job until further notice. And Kolek will have to do a lot, in my view, to take it based on what the coach prioritizes. The veteran aspect of this is key. But that first half, I think, was good enough to where we can look at Kolek as a viable option going forward. And I know he didn't make shots from the perimeter, but I do think his shooting is going to play. As a catch and shoot player, he shot wonderfully well off the catch at Marquette. And his shot looks good. His free throw shooting looks great. I think from a standstill position, he's going to be able to space the floor. And that is one advantage he has over Payne, who has been a better shooter off the dribble this year than he has off the catch. And I think for the Knicks, it might be more of a priority to get a guy that you can be confident can make shots off the catch at 38-40%. And that feels like a high bar, but I think Cole can reach that bar. So that's a big takeaway here, that performance. Beyond other than, those two players, and in terms of and then the game as a whole, going up the way they went up, it was, I don't want to say reasonable to expect them to take their foot off the gas, but to let the Wizards get it to 4, I thought was pretty bad. Now, they made it to where it wasn't a true embarrassing effort because when, the full starting unit came back in the game and Anunoby re-entered, the whole vibe of the game changed. Anunoby actually guarded Marcus Smart on one possession, created a missed shot. Then Smart leaves the game right after that. Knicks were able to pretty much take control from that point. And winning by 19 in this game, look, you're going to take it. And now you get a win. Now you get some time off until you get Dallas on Tuesday. You get a back-to-back Tuesday, Dallas. These are at MSG, and then the Clippers. So maybe you could string some wins together at MSG. We know the travel was brutal. We know that. We know the team was not an excuse, but they were dog tired. San Antonio, Charlotte, like that's a real thing. So hopefully once they get to the Dallas game on Tuesday, they can now build off this. And look, they have the 5th best record in the NBA too. I think that's also part of, and this is where I'll finish. This is the big picture aspect to where the Knicks are right now. 5th best record in the NBA. Jalen Brunson on the mend and looking like he is trending in a positive direction. Once Brunson returns, and I talked about this with John during our Patreon podcast, what really has changed for the worse? Because if you look at when Jalen Brunson returns, I think they're in basically the same position as they were prior to the injury, with the only exception being Mitchell Robinson placing them in an even better spot. Despite a lackluster performance tonight, Mitchell Robinson, in general, as a whole, has looked really good this season. So you can get Jalen Brunson back in the next couple of weeks. The Knicks will have, let's say they have the 5th best record at that point. They kind of steady the ship a little bit. 5th best record, Brunson coming back. They have the 3 seed. What has really changed? Now we would be back to, the Knicks and the ceiling and how do they match up with Boston and can they be competitive in that series and that's in the potential second round matchup. But that's what we were talking about prior to Brunson getting hurt. And it felt over the past few games like the sky was falling. But you take a step back and you sort of take account of where they are right now as a team. And it's, I think, more likely than not that run, those 2 games that left such a sour taste in everyone's mouth, rightfully so, was really just a blip on the radar. And that the team did steady the ship after that. They got their captain back in short order. And now we would be left with just figuring out how to compete with Boston. And that is maybe an unanswerable question right now, but is the question and was the question prior to Brunson getting hurt. So you get a win tonight, a much needed win. You douse the flames. As I said, the embers still burn, but you have some room here to get a couple other wins, at least against Dallas, a decimated team injury-wise, and a Clipper team that's a quality, good basketball team that you should beat on your home floor, even though it's going to be the second of a back-to-back. And you get a little 3-game win streak. You start to feel better about yourself. And that's where I think the thought needs to be. 5th best record in the NBA. We need to put that into our calculation when we get so, and I'm guilty of it too, we get so honed in on every possession, every play, game, quarter, that we lose perspective, the big picture. And the big picture right now is pretty good for the Knicks. Like, there are a lot of teams that would trade positions with us in a heartbeat. And the captain's on his way back. And that, to me, gives me a lot of hope. This game didn't sort of make that any stronger, but you know what? A win is a win is a win is a win, and you get them when you can, and you figure it out, and you get another win against Dallas, and you start to string together some quality victories until Brunson is back, and you start to build towards the playoffs.